Welcome back, everyone. CWI Blackout live at Stillwater Books, continuing our series of author interviews for the upcoming Rhode Island Author Expo that is happening December 5th. It's going to be an entirely virtual event. There's going to be author meet and greets, there's going to be panels, forums, a whole nine yards. Go to riauthorexpo.com for more information. I'll be emceeing the thing right from here. And just as a little preface to our discussion, we are adhering to all the COVID guidelines. We had our masks on prior to this interview. We're sitting a good distance apart, and once we are done, masks go back on. Right now, I am very happy because it's weird timing, actually, given that we're right here to Halloween weekend. I am talking to author Christine Lajewski. Awesome start.
Every interview I have to do this.
I am glad that we can continue the tradition of getting your name wrong. No stranger to horror fiction. You have written a number of books. Bone Belly, which I absolutely love. Erring on the Side of Calamity, and most recently, you've got a story in the Wicked Women Anthology.
Yes, I do.
Which is a collection of work by the New England women
horror writers.
Gotcha.
New England horror writers.
All right, gotcha.
And it's all female, including Trish Woolridge, the the editor, and a fantastic. I wish we could show people. Fantastic artist. First name Lynn, and then I'm sitting here. Let me see if I can pull up her name, because I forget everybody's name. It's,
it's not just me. Excellent.
Lynn Hanson. That's such a tough name to forget, to remember, and I forget it every time. She is amazing. It's like if I need cover art, that's where I'm going.
Nice. So tell me about the work that you have included in this collection.
Okay, it's called Child of Reason. And it's actually the first chapter of, I think it's going to be a novella. I was planning a longer work, and it's about a child of strange parentage living in, only knows life with his mother in a small farm that's smack in the middle of a rather large forest. But they're growing some very strange flowers, like the flowers, if you wouldn't want to turn your back on them.
Oh.
And so he realizes that he has a parentage that is kind of supernatural and magical and stuff, and he wants to know more and more and more, and eventually he is able to outdo his mother and who he learns his father is. But it doesn't work out really well for everybody. So you have a little sort of a fairy tale type story, but it's a boy who is now firmly on the path to becoming a pretty awful, evil person.
So does the boy start off as being kind of like a good guy, or is he like always? You can like always tell that he's the villain in the story.
You do not think he's the villain. What he is he's eager, curious, and wants to learn. And if he was raised somewhere else, he might, he certainly has certain talents and stuff, but he's no Harry Potter or anything like that. No resemblance whatsoever. It's more that he's kind of left to his own devices, so as he follows his own curiosity, he becomes more and more and more of a bad seed. Let's put it that way. Not inherently evil. It's just, I will take the wings off this bug because I can. What happens as a result.
Jeez.
Only it's on a much larger scale than just insects.
Of course it is. Now, is this a case of of him lacking any kind of guidance?
The guidance, he's given guidance, it's his parents don't anticipate where it's going to take him or take them. So it's more that type of thing.
Gotcha.
And it will be, this is, I started writing this novella with the person, the central character, actually somewhat advanced in age, middle-aged, and then I simultaneously did a little piece of flash fiction about someone learning to tend mother's garden with these really odd plants in it. And and then I realized I kind of needed to go all the way back to how this person became the evil man that he was. And so the first part, this novella, is basically going to be his journey through childhood and youth. He also keeps trying, he wants a family, and he keeps doing things that are really not good for his family or anybody else's.
Now, given this is a short story, you obviously have a finite amount of pages to get the scare out. How do you do that without just like throwing it in the readers' faces?
It helps if you have a decent amount of length given to you. So it moves rather quickly in the short story. It's when I go back to writing the novella, it'll be drawn out a little more in, the short story is my first chapter. There's a couple of things that could be developed a little more but weren't because of length requirements. The editors are telling me, though, that does not hurt the story in the least, as a standalone story. So for me, one is, how good are your descriptions? You can do lengthy descriptions, or you can, with just the right word, it's twisting the knife. I don't know how else to put it. It's twisting the knife. I find the best guidance for learning how to improve how you describe things and coming up with just that word and just that phrase is reading poetry and trying to write poetry. You want to know how to write a descriptive phrase, read Emily Dickinson. It has nothing to do with horror. But if she doesn't blow you away and teach you a few lessons, then maybe you're not meant to be a writer.
Now, was she a real influence for you before you?
She's one. Yeah. She's one. Another one would be Sylvia Plath, who's just there's a mythic quality, and a lot of her poetry is just out and out scary. There's just a sense of dread or a sense of menace in her poetry, and it's like I'd love to steal some of her phrases. You can't do that, but.
They kind of frown on that.
They kind of frown on that, yeah. But it sets a bar for you to work on, to reaching. The other piece is I don't think I could ever do, speech to print as a means of writing. But after I've written it, I'm sort of. I'm whispering, but I'm kind of reading each phrase, how does it sound, and going for a rhythm, almost a poetry-like rhythm. I am not a good poet by any means, but I'm kind of going for that. The other part of it is you do need to build. There have to be questions, and then when they're answered, my feeling is they should be answered explosively. Bam, action, 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 action. Dread, dread, dread. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
So it sounds like you kind of blend the whole creating a scary ambiance with the jump scenes.
Jump scenes, yeah, but and if it's not necessarily jump scares, I mean that I do use some of those, but it's also how it now plays out, how the child in this story, for example, reveals himself to be who he is. It's not just, if there was just one jump scare, it would be a piece of flash fiction. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Or, a 2,000, 3,000 word story. This is a longer story, so it's a lot of sequential action, but I hope somewhat breathless. So the reader is, oh God, what's happening next? Oh my God, what's happening next? I personally like a story where I'm trying to I have to catch my breath as I'm reading it. What's going to happen next? It's like sometimes I read too fast. If that kind of story, if I've latched onto that kind of story, and I end up having to stop myself and go back and actually reread it a little more slowly because I might have missed something. But that's what I like to do.
Now, as a horror writer, are you a hard person to scare?
I am now, because not so much because I'm writing, but because I became a scare actor. I started at Spooky World in '99. I went to Trails to Terror in Wakefield, Rhode Island at Highland Farms. I'm now at Barrett's Haunted Mansion in Abington, Massachusetts. When you see everything behind the scenes, you don't get scared. Books will still scare me though, and movies will.
Mm-hmm.
It's but what I do as a haunt actor, and I find myself doing it as a horror writer, and it's what I appreciate in a horror movie, is I want the WTF moment.
Mm.
And there's quite a few movies out there now. I really like some of the newer horror, they're full of WTF moments. The other thing is, I really like creep and dread.
Mm-hmm.
There are movies I have not watched and I will not watch. I haven't watched a single one of the Saw movies. I saw the first 15 minutes of the first one. The violence porn.
I'm not a fan of that.
The Hostel movies I will not watch.
Nah.
Human Centipede, I don't want to be gross. Body horror is great, but The Fly and Tusk is that's about it.
Yeah,
That's
The
not
Fly.
right there.
The first one was amazing.
Mhm.
In both in terms of like the creature design and the way that just Jeff Goldblum owned that
Yeah,
role.
yeah.
Like you can put anyone in a scary suit and they can maybe be scary.
The
but it doesn't
50s
matter.
one was pretty good too.
Oh, yeah.
That ended up being a little more, you're watching what appears to be a wife going crazy and it's not, so, the weight of the story is on her, really. But very effective. But the Jeff Goldblum one, that's body horror done right. It's
Definitely.
like, I don't go back and rewatch it all the time either. It's like, I like the movie, but...
Yeah, it's kind of like the cat's out of the bag. You've seen what there's to see. But is there a movie that you can watch like multiple times, like something in the horror genre?
Most of them.
Okay.
Most of them. It's just, I've told you the ones I will not watch.
Gotcha.
That doesn't do anything for me. That doesn't mean I don't watch any slasher films or anything either. But for me, like I said, I've really enjoyed the newer ones. Get Out, Us, It Follows. That's ingenious. I think that movie is so well done. The Babadook. But of more violent ones, Hereditary and Midsummer. Slow burns and just one WTF moment after another.
Yeah.
And then some that might be a little more old school, Autopsy of Jane Doe, I think is stellar. I did like the HBO series, Lovecraft Country.
Mm-hmm.
Really well done. Few bobbles here and there, but well done. And of course I like the classics.
Definitely.
I'm old enough. When I came home from school to watch Creature Feature, it was all the Universal monsters, and I still love them.
Yeah, definitely. Now, we have as someone who has worked as a haunt actor for numerous places, are you able to sort of like dissect these horror movie scenes? Say, okay, that's how they did this. This is how they did that. Do you look at it with more like?
Not all, because the effects are so different. You're not that. This is not Meryl Streep acting. You've got a few seconds to make an impression.
Mm-hmm.
What the haunt acting did, it's less about the movies. It's more that I was writing before this, and I did not start writing horror until I started haunt acting.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of like if there were slow times, I'd be sitting around thinking, what are ways I don't want to die? That became some of the stories in Erring on the Side of Calamity.
That's a good premise
It's a good premise.
Open with.
The other thing is developing my own characters. A lot of haunt actors, particularly the young ones, they are chasing people down, and they're slashing at them with claws. They're running on stilts, for God's sake. They're bathed in blood. Your larger guys, they're just being imposing. They're the ones with the chainsaws and things like that. And I started haunt acting when I was 46 years old. I'm not going to be imposing, but it was a moment of serendipity. I was doing a character I called Auntie Nosferatu, bald head, rat teeth, as opposed to the pointy vampire teeth. And the people who were falling down and screaming were grown men. Grown men. They were looking at me going, "God, it looks like your mother, it looks like your mother-in-law." It's like, and running and pushing each other out of the way. And it's like, I think I've got a mother load here I can mine. And pun intended, it's the matronly character, and she's just so wrong. It's just, she's not supposed to be acting that way.
Did you ever take any haunt actor scenes, any experiences, and put it into your books at all?
Bone Belly is all of that.
Oh, okay.
Well, remember, you read it, right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, it takes place in a haunted attraction.
Okay.
I've always wanted to do an ode to the haunt attractions and the actors and how it's put together and behind the scenes. And it is about a monster, someone who's condemned to his own private hell. And of course, it's in a wooded area in Rhode Island. Where else would it be? And he is in the middle of his misery, where he tries to avoid people because he wants to eat them. And he kind of has the idea, maybe I can earn my way out of this hell if I don't eat people. Yet he's constantly hungry. There's nothing else he really can eat. So the only thing that relieves his misery is he discovers this farm that does a haunted attraction in the fall. And he kind of falls in love with the theater of the place, and he falls in love with the actors too. And over the years, it's kind of like, you know what, I could do this too. I actually am scary. He starts inserting himself in scenes. But in the meantime, he had a partner in crime who's kind of working his way across the country and ends up at the haunt. And, now bad things are happening, and he's got to decide, who do I kill, who do I save?
It's a serious conundrum.
It's a serious conundrum.
Now, we had you on the show last February, and we talked about Bone Belly. What have you been up to since then?
Moving.
Now that's scary.
That's kind of interrupted the process. Moving during COVID, it actually was something that should have been 6 weeks, took 5.5 months.
Oh, geez.
Because of delay after I was actually living out of boxes for a long time.
Ugh.
It was really depressing. In the meantime, though, it's not that I didn't do writing. I did get some stories out. There's this anthology and a couple of small publications, not major, but I began working on turning one of my stories in Erring on the Side of Calamity, Lot's Wife, into a screenplay. That took some time. And then starting this novella. And after I had worked on that novella for maybe 3 or 4 months, it was, if you're a writer out there, you're familiar with this, scrap the whole thing and start over again. So it wasn't that I was not writing. I wasn't writing as much as I'd like to, and I'm now getting back to that.
Very cool, very cool. So I know you mentioned that you were going to be expanding on the story you wrote for the Wicked Women anthology. What else do you have in the works?
I'm a couple of short stories that I'm trying to send around right now, as well as the screenplay. These are things that I've got out right now, and just finished them up. It's interesting that they've gotten darker since COVID. Just 2020 being a bad year, I shared one of them called Mother's Milk with my writers group. And they're kind of this stunned, we're meeting virtually, of course, but there was just kind of this silence after I finished reading it. And one of my fellow writers said, "Oh, you've gotten a bit dark, haven't you?"
It's that kind of year, though.
It's that kind of year. So, and I can say this about other people in my writing group, too. It's like everybody's just got this story that has nothing to do with disease, has nothing to do with politics, necessarily, but they're just dark and despairing. So yeah, so that's it right now. Starting to get into the meat of the novella. That's going to end up taking all my time, I think.
Excellent. I'm curious how the horror landscape has changed. Of course, like horror movies, we're seeing like a bunch more every year. We're seeing a lot more of the haunted house genre and so forth. Does it change how you pitch your story because you have all this competition?
I change how I pitch my story with any place I send it.
Okay.
What do I put the emphasis on? It's what they're looking for.
Gotcha.
And if I think it matches even, at all what they're looking for, if the pitch is on, if the pitch is on female characters, that's the way I pitch it. If it's on, supernatural elements, that's what you want. What I actually find is more an issue. It's not how I pitch it, it's whether I write for a particular, if there's a call out for submissions, if I write for it at all.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I enjoy Lovecraft stories. I'm not a Lovecraft person as a
Mm-hmm.
writer. I don't do vampires. I do have a sort of vampire story in my short story collection. It's called Mercy Brown and Me, and it's about the Mercy Brown, buried in Exeter, Rhode Island. But it's more. I've spent my teaching career in alternative education, and there is this kind of, you find that kids who may have problems, they get together and form their own echo chamber. For example, an issue that had come up off and on during my teaching career is girls getting together who may cut themselves, and now they reinforce that behavior, and boys too sometimes, in each other. This was the romance of the urban legend of who Mercy Brown is, and is she? Of course, she's not a vampire, but it's a 14-year-old girl who thinks she's become friends with this ghost that is Mercy Brown. Is she really? Is there really a ghost? Is there really a vampire? That's about as far as I got with anything with vampires and stuff. There's a lot in speculative fiction. A lot of the calls go out for world building, for for sci-fi, things that involve the technology and changes in technology. Fantasy with those are just, it's not that those things don't interest me, I just don't tend to write those things. My stuff it's getting more, and it's bending more and more towards fairy tale type stuff. Mm-hmm. And a lot of nature horror. I'm also a teacher naturalist at Massachusetts Audubon. We take school groups around and stuff, and you roll over logs and there's weird things under it. And there's a lot of fodder there for stories.
Oh, I'll bet.
So,
kids are like, ew, bugs, and you're like, ideas.
Yes. So yeah, some of those, one of the stories I've got going, I've been sending out right now is called The Baby in the Well.
Oh, jeez.
And it's
that's going south real fast.
Yeah, and it's two deer hunters who hear a sound. They're chasing a buck through the woods, and they see an old farm, and they hear a sound coming from the well, and they look down, and there's a little face and little hands looking up, and it's crying.
Geez.
And so they're trying to rescue the baby, and something else happens.
That's terrifying. That's uniquely terrifying.
It actually was. I read it at a reading. Was it? Oh my gosh, was it last November, December, somewhere in there? It was before the lockdown,
Mm-hmm.
and it was Noir at the Bar.
Oh yeah,
and people were in hysterics. I like to do the voices too, so it's like I was doing the voices for every character. So it's one of those stories where it's like, oh God, this is going to be bad, and then but you're laughing anyway, and you're kind of ashamed you're laughing.
Nice. All right, well, Christine, thank you once again for joining me. Appreciate it. And for the folks at home, you go to Christine M. Lajewski, LAJEWSKI.com for more information. Of course, check out RIAuthorExpo.com for more info on the upcoming Rhode Island Author Expo.
And I have a Facebook page too.
Excellent. And we will see you next week. Later.
Bye-bye.